reincarnation. It's everywhere you look these days, right?
It really is.
You see it in movies, books.
Yeah.
I feel like I even meet people now and then who are convinced they were, like Cleopatra in a past life.
Right.
Which is all fun and interesting, but I think a lot of us, we want to go a little deeper with this.
Yeah.
Like, how does this whole reincarnation thing actually work? And what does it mean for me, like, right here, right now?
Right.
So that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Okay.
We've got two really interesting sources that we're going to be looking at.
Yes. And they are quote different, which I think will be really fascinating. You've got an early 1900s theosophical text called Reincarnation.
Okay.
And then a more modern piece that analyzes these themes of reincarnation in the film Cloud Atlas.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see how those two very different perspectives tackle this idea. And, you know, one of the things I find really interesting is they both actually start by addressing something that I think we all kind of grapple with at some point.
Okay.
Which is, why does the world seem so unfair sometimes?
Yeah.
Like, how come bad things happen to good people?
Right.
If there's this bigger plan, why is there so much suffering? It's a question that both the author of our first source, Reincarnation, Irving S. Cooper, he really digs into this. And then, of course, the author of the Cloud Atlas analysis, they both kind of start from this place of like, whoa, there's a lot of injustice in the world. How do we make sense of that?
Right. Because if this is it,
Yeah.
it does feel a little unfair at times, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by this anecdote that Cooper tells in his book about this man who was wrongly imprisoned.
Oh, wow.
For decades. Like, he was in prison for decades for a crime he didn't commit.
Oh, no.
And eventually the real criminal confesses.
Okay.
And so this man, he's finally exonerated, but he's completely broken by this experience.
Yeah.
Physically, emotionally, spiritually, he's just utterly destroyed. And his question is, if there's a God, why would this happen to me?
Right.
And it's such a powerful question, and it's one that I think really cuts to the heart of why this idea of reincarnation is so appealing to a lot of people. Because if this life isn't the end of the story, if there's more to it than that, then maybe there's a way to make sense of these seemingly random acts of, you know, suffering or injustice.
It's like this life is just one chapter
Exactly.
in a much, much longer book.
Yeah, it's not the whole novel.
Exactly. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more, you're not alone. A
Exactly.
lot of people feel that way.
Right. So instead of just thinking about life as this finite experience that begins at birth and ends at death, it's more about recognizing that we might be on these continuous journeys
Yes.
of growth and evolution that extend way beyond just this one lifetime.
Right. And maybe we come back again and again to kind of learn and evolve and
Right.
become the best versions of ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack that. We're going to dive into how that might actually work.
Yeah, let's do it.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think it's important to start with a clear definition of what we even mean by reincarnation.
Okay.
Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there.
There are.
I mean, some people think it's all about, like, coming back as a cat or a dog.
Right.
And while I'm sure that's a fun thought for some, I have a feeling we're looking for something a little more,
A little deeper than that.
a little deeper than that, yeah.
Okay.
So how would you define reincarnation?
Well, it's interesting because Cooper, in our first source, he defines reincarnation as this process of essentially immortal beings, you might call them souls, gaining experience through a series of physical lives.
Okay.
And I love how he describes it. He says the earth is like a school,
Okay.
and each life is like a semester.
Okay.
And we're here to learn and to evolve. And sometimes it takes us a few semesters to really get a handle on those lessons.
No, some of us are a little slower than others.
Exactly. We might need a summer school or two.
Yeah, exactly. So how does Cloud Atlas, the film, how does that visually represent this idea of souls being reborn and kind of coming back again and again?
Yeah. So the film does a really interesting thing where it jumps between these different timelines and characters
Right.
who are all subtly connected.
Right.
And it suggests that these characters across time are actually the same souls being reborn
Oh, wow.
and interacting with each other over and over
Oh,
again.
that's so cool.
It's like they're weaving this really intricate tapestry of cause and effect.
I love that. It's like every choice we make,
Yeah.
every action we take,
It has these ripples.
it sends out these ripples
Yes.
that can impact not only like our future lives, but also the lives of those around us.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
A lot to wrap your head around.
It is a lot.
But it's also kind of amazing.
It is amazing. So that kind of leads to the next question then. If we are in fact these eternal beings, these souls that keep coming back, what's the point? Like, why are we doing all of this?
Right. What's the bigger purpose?
Yeah, what's the bigger purpose? Is it just for fun? Is the universe just like messing with us?
Right. Or is there some grand plan?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just about entertainment, right? Like life and death and coming back again. It's not just a cosmic game of tag. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Both Cooper and the Cloud Atlas author, they both seem to agree that this is serious business. Like, we're here for a reason.
Okay, so it's not just the cosmic vacation. No.
Oh.
No free vacations on this journey, unfortunately. It's about growth. It's about those challenges we face, right? Those curveballs that life throws at us. They're not meant to punish us or to just, make us suffer.
Right.
They're opportunities.
Okay.
Opportunities for learning, for like soul level learning.
Yeah.
The kind of growth that transcends just this one little lifetime.
Okay, so it's like even when it feels like the universe is against us, even when we're going through those really tough times, there's actually a bigger purpose to it.
Yeah. And that brings us to, I think, what's really at the heart of what makes reincarnation so empowering.
Okay.
We're not just these like helpless victims of fate, right? It's not just like, oh, this is happening to me.
Right.
We actually play an active role in shaping who we become. And every lifetime is part of that process. Like, we're constantly working on this epic, multidimensional masterpiece, and each life is a brushstroke.
I love that analogy, the masterpiece. Okay, so how does this soul growth actually happen?
Right.
Like, what's going on behind the scenes between lives?
Yes. And this is where Cooper's book gets really, really interesting.
Okay.
Because he actually tried to pull back the curtain and kind of give us a glimpse of the mechanics of it all.
Okay.
He spends a good chunk of the book talking about what happens after death. And it ain't pretty, let me tell you. No, it's not bad.
Yeah.
But it's not just like a quick hop from point A to point B. There's a whole process.
Okay, so walk us through it. What does Cooper say happens when we die?
Okay, so first, he introduces this idea that we are not just these singular physical beings.
Okay.
We're actually made up of multiple layers. He calls them bodies. And these subtle bodies are really key to understanding this whole afterlife journey.
Okay.
So he talks about, for example, the astral body.
The astral body.
Yeah, and he describes this as kind of like an energetic blueprint that carries with it all of our emotions and our desires and our personality traits.
So it's not just our physical body that dies, but there's this other part of us.
Exactly. That persists, that carries those emotional imprints with it. And what's according to Cooper, after death, we spend the period of time in what he calls the astral plane.
The astral plane.
Yes. Which is essentially, think of it like a realm of pure emotion, pure energy. It's where we process the events of our past life. We come to terms with our unfinished business. Maybe we work through some lingering emotional baggage.
It's a cosmic decompression chamber.
Exactly. After a particularly intense lifetime.
I love it. Okay, so we're not talking about like, instant karmic judgment here. There's actual time for reflection.
Exactly. And in fact, it's during this time in the astral realm that we start to piece together the lessons of our past life.
Okay.
We might even experience a kind of life review where key events play out again and we get to see the impact of our choices from a wider perspective.
Oh, wow. So it's like that saying, we can only connect the dots looking backward.
Exactly.
But in this case, it's not just about understanding the past. It's about using that understanding to prepare for the future.
Precisely. And as we move through these astral experiences, our consciousness begins to shift
Oh, okay.
to a higher vibration.
Okay.
And this is where Cooper introduces another subtle body, the mental body.
Okay, the mental body. So we've got the physical body, the astral body.
The astral body, now the mental body.
Yeah.
And this one is associated with our intellect, our higher mind.
Okay.
Right? Our capacity for like abstract thought. And just like our physical body needs a physical world to exist in, this mental body thrives in a realm that's less about emotion and more about pure thought and understanding.
So we graduate from kindergarten, emotional processing, to like cosmic university.
Exactly. And he calls this the mental plane.
Okay.
And this is a realm of incredible peace and clarity. It's where we connect with other souls on a much deeper level. We essentially download all the wisdom and the insights that we've gleaned from our past life.
And this is where we hang out for like the majority of the time between lives.
This is break. Right. We're absorbing these lessons, figuring out what we want to do next. And this is also, according to Cooper at least, where we start to get a sense of our soul's, like, overall trajectory.
Okay.
We might get these glimpses of past lives and future lives and start to understand how each one fits into this grand tapestry.
Wow. So it's not like we just check out completely between lives, there's still this sense of me or I, this continuity of consciousness that kind of carries through.
Exactly. It's like the soul is always evolving. It's always learning, even when we're not in a physical body.
Mm.
And what's really cool is that Cooper suggests that we actually have a say in what kind of life we'll be drawn to next.
Okay, so it's not just some random cosmic lottery. We're not just getting assigned a new life based on, like, how many karmic brownie points we've racked up.
No, but it's more nuanced than that. It's like, remember how we talked about karma as cause and effect? It's about recognizing that the choices we've made in the past, they create certain inclinations, certain tendencies within our soul.
Yeah.
So we might be drawn to experiences that help us to balance out past actions or to learn specific lessons.
So it's like we're always striving for this greater balance and understanding, even if it takes us multiple lifetimes to get there. Okay, so this is where things start to get really real right, because now we're talking about how we actually re-enter the physical world.
Yes.
How we choose our next life, our next family, our next set of circumstances. Yeah. That's a lot. I know, right? Yeah. It's like the ultimate makeover. New life, new look, hopefully. Better wifey this time around. But seriously, you touched on something that I think is really key here. This whole idea that we actually get a say in the kind of life we're choosing. Like, we're not just, pawns in some cosmic game.
Right. It's not just fate or destiny calling all the shots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how much free will do we actually have?
Well, Cooper's take on it is interesting. He says it's less about, like, consciously picking and choosing from a cosmic menu of options, It's more about being drawn to certain experiences based on those inclinations within our soul.
Okay, so it's like those times when you just feel inexplicably drawn to something.
Yeah, like a magnetic pull.
Yeah, like you meet someone and it's like, oh, I feel like I've known you forever. Or you walk into a place you've never been and it feels strangely familiar.
Yes, exactly. And that actually leads us perfectly into this whole question of memory, which is a big one, right?
Yeah.
If we are, in fact, these eternal souls that keep coming back, why don't we remember those past lives?
Right. Like, that's what I want to know. I can remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I've got nothing about my past life as, like, a samurai warrior or whatever. It seems a little unfair.
I know. You'd think we'd have access to all that juicy past life data, wouldn't you? But both Cooper and our first source and the Cloud Atlas analysis, they both actually address this head on.
Okay.
They suggest that maybe full-blown, crystal-clear memories of past lives, maybe that wouldn't be so helpful after all.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine if you were constantly being bombarded by memories from hundreds or even thousands of past lives.
Oh my gosh, that would be way too much.
Right. It would be completely overwhelming. How would you ever focus on the present moment? How would you learn the lessons that you're here to learn in this lifetime? It would be like trying to have a conversation with someone, but you've got like 50 other conversations going on in your head at the same time.
That's like information overload.
Exactly. And so both sources propose this idea that instead of carrying around like massive detailed memory banks, we might retain more of a distilled essence of those past experiences.
Okay, so it's less about remembering like specific events or dates or names. It's more about recognizing patterns.
Yes. Like maybe you have this inexplicable fear of heights and you can't figure out why. And then later, you discover that in a past life, you fell from a great height and it was very traumatic. You don't necessarily remember the event itself, but the emotional imprint is still there.
Interesting. So it's like our soul has learned that lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need to keep reliving it over and over again, but we've got that wisdom kind of tucked away.
Yes, exactly. And Cooper gets really specific about this, which I love. He actually provides a whole list of what he calls memory summaries, which are basically like these subtle clues that he believes point to the influence of past lives.
Okay, like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so we've got those unexplained phobias that we talked about.
Okay, yeah.
Strong attractions or aversions to certain places or time periods. Maybe you've got this inexplicable talent or ability that seems to come out of nowhere.
Right.
Like you sit down at a piano and you're just like, oh, Mozart all of a sudden.
Right. Or you pick up a paintbrush and bam, you're the next Picasso.
Exactly. He even talks about things like recurring dreams, déjà vu experiences.
Right. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, yeah, totally. I've definitely had those moments where I walk into a place for the first time and it feels strangely familiar, like I've been here before, or I meet someone new and there's this instant connection.
Yes, me too.
And Cooper would say those aren't just coincidences, they're your soul's way of like whispering to you, reminding you that you've been here before. And Cloud Atlas, it takes a similar approach, but they use a lot of really cool visual cues.
Right.
Like there are these characters who have similar birthmarks across different timelines, or there's this recurring musical theme that seems to connect them.
Oh, that's right.
It's like this subtle nod to the audience, inviting us to put the pieces together.
It's very clever. So we've talked a lot about like the whys and the hows of reincarnation, but I think the big question for a lot of us is, so what? Like, what does it all really mean for how we live our lives right now?
Right. Because it's all well and good to think about past lives and future lives and cosmic journeys and all that. But at the end of the day, we're here.
Exactly. And we've got to deal with traffic and pay our taxes and all those fun things.
Exactly. So how do we take these really big, kind of mind-blowing concepts and actually apply them to our everyday lives? And I think, both the sources we look at today would say that understanding reincarnation isn't just about satisfying our curiosity.
Right.
It actually has really profound implications for how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, how we interact with the world around us.
So it can actually change how we live our lives.
Exactly. For example, one of the most powerful takeaways for me is this idea of radical responsibility. If we really take seriously this idea that we are the architects of our own destiny, across lifetimes even, it changes everything. It means that when we face setbacks or we make mistakes, we're not just, victims of circumstance. We actually have the power to learn from those experiences.
It's incredibly empowering when you think about it that way. It's not, woe is me. It's, okay, what can I learn from this?
Yes. What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And it's not just about individual growth either. I think understanding reincarnation, it also just cultivates this much deeper sense of compassion and empathy for other people.
Because we're all just out here, trying to figure it out. We're all on our own unique journeys. We've all had those like awkward early lifetimes, right?
Exactly. We've all been that guy. So the next time you encounter someone who's maybe behaving badly or making choices that you don't understand, it's a little bit easier to extend a little grace when you remember that they are also on their own path. They're learning their own lessons.
It's a good reminder. And on that note of compassion and understanding, I think this is a perfect place for us to wrap up this deep dive into reincarnation.
Yes. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And for those of you listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced anything that's made you think about past lives? Or did anything we talk about today really resonate with you? Head over to social media, let us know. Let's keep this conversation going. And until next time, keep exploring.